Hi, welcome back to our board exam review. Today we'll be talking about pediatric nursing, cardiovascular disorders, particularly heart failure. So it's a fairly simple concept wherein heart failure, simply, what is it? Okay, let's define it. It is the failure or the inability, okay, of your heart to pump blood. Meaning, your heart has been so exhausted already. It's been pushing. Maybe there's some sort of problem that exists in the other parts of the heart that caused your heart to keep pushing and exert more effort into pumping. But the moment your heart gets tired, the moment your heart begins to give up already, that is what you call heart failure. So it can be caused by other congenital heart defects, like we mentioned in the previous discussions that we have. So what happens when your heart fails? How does that affect the rest of the cardiovascular system? Remember, the main concept in heart failure is the concept of backflow. Okay, so when your heart gets so tired, the problem is the backflow. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this example over here. So your heart failure can either be right-sided heart failure or left-sided heart failure. Now there are distinct characteristics and we will go in depth over here. All right, so first, left-sided heart failure, meaning the left side of our heart decides to give up. It does not want to work anymore. Let's trace the flow of that blood again. All right, so superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. All right, that is blue. Right atrium into the right ventricle. This is deoxygenated blood, by the way. Goes to your pulmonary arteries. Okay, where it is led into your lungs. Let's pretend those are lungs. And then the blood gets oxygenated. Okay, once it leaves the lungs, and it's brought back to the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, and then it goes to the left ventricle. But your left ventricle, supposedly it pumps blood to the aorta, right? But because it's so tired already, okay, it decides to fail. Inability of the heart to pump blood already. It's too exhausted to do that. It does not pump anymore. Okay, so it stops here. Okay, it does not pump. So what happens to the blood that is supposed to be pumped here? There's a lot of blood that goes. Okay, again, the concept of backflow. Okay, where did it come from? Okay, the blood here is so it's too much, but this one won't work. Okay, it won't work. So there's too much blood. It eventually backflows. Okay, it backflows because there's too much blood and it's not being pushed forward. So instead it goes backward. And then you will hear, okay, the blood accumulates here instead in the lungs. Okay, and the same thing happens with the other side. It does not, okay, go because the left ventricle won't push it to the aorta, so it goes back instead. Okay, there's too much blood, too much, that it goes back to your lungs. All right, it accumulates in your lungs. Therefore, in left-sided heart failure, as you can see, the problem is pulmonary. Why? It backflows, the blood backflows to your lungs. All right, let's take a look at systemic or right-sided heart failure. Okay, right-sided heart failure. So, diba, from the rest of your body, okay, from your other organs, your stomach, your liver, your kidneys, everything, okay, all of that blood goes, uses it up, right? Uses the oxygenated blood, and then goes to the inferior vena cava, superior vena cava, into your right atrium. Oh, by the way, it is right-sided heart failure, so it is this right side of the heart that fails to work already. Decided it does not want to work anymore. It's so exhausted. Okay, so all of this blood from the superior vena cava enters the right atrium. But the right ventricle it's supposed to push it over here into the pulmonary artery and into the lungs, etc. But this time it does not pump it anymore. So again, all that blood is being pushed over here, but it decides not to work. It does not work. So instead, it goes back. Okay, backflow of blood into the superior vena cava, into the inferior vena cava, into the rest of your body. So you have a lot of blood, a lot of deoxygenated blood that exists in our body. Okay, it goes back to your liver, it goes back to your kidneys, it goes back to your veins. Okay, so the problem here, again, it's still the concept of backflow, but the problem here is not pulmonary, it is systemic, meaning the rest of your body, if it is right-sided heart failure. So again, left-sided heart failure, this one, left-sided heart failure, the problem is pulmonary. The blood pools over here in our lungs because of the concept of backflow. And right-sided heart failure, right-sided, it backflows into your superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, and to the rest of the veins in the kidneys and the liver. The problem is systemic. Memorize this one. I want you to have that memorized by heart. Left side pulmonary, right side systemic. Left side pulmonary, right side systemic. Okay, so let's take a look at the signs and symptoms. What I want you to remember, early signs and symptoms of your heart failure, there's two. Important. Put a star on this as well. Is tachypnea and tachycardia. Okay, basically it's an early sign. For example, over here, tachypnea, you will have difficulty breathing when there's a lot of blood that pools over here, right? So that's an early sign of heart failure. And also tachycardia, your heart will begin to pump faster. So it cannot, there are two, right, possibilities. The heart can pump either harder, or because in heart failure it cannot do that anymore, what it does is it pumps faster. Okay, so tachycardia, it's trying to expel that blood. It's still trying its best, but it has no ability to increase the force that it is pumping with. All right, so just remember these, memorize these. It's kind of like a compensatory mechanism, tachycardia and tachypnea, early signs of heart failure. Now let's take a look. Again, which one is pulmonary? Is it the right side or the left side? It is your left side, pulmonary symptoms. And which side is systemic? Of course, wala na nabilin. It is our right side. Our right side is systemic. Left side pulmonary, right side systemic. So I want you guys to look at this box over here. It is a box that lists several signs and symptoms. Now I want you to tell me whether it belongs to the left-sided heart failure, pulmonary, or right-sided heart failure, systemic. Let's take a look at it one by one. Dyspnea. What is that? Dyspnea, is it pulmonary or systemic? Of course, it is pulmonary. Dyspnea is difficulty in breathing. Crackles or rales. You guys know what crackles or rales is? It is this sound when there is fluid, okay? Sound that you hear when you auscultate the lungs, or there is fluid, okay? So, in the lungs, ang crackles and rales. That is, again, pulmonary. Another, body weakness. Is that pulmonary or systemic? Body weakness, from the word itself, of course, it is systemic, right? Weight gain. Weight gain. Is that pulmonary or systemic? Is it a problem in your lungs when you gain weight? Of course not. It isn't systemic siya. It's a problem in your body. Next, orthopnea. Pnea. Breathing. Okay, still difficulty breathing. We'll put it in pulmonary. Another, hepatomegaly and portal hypertension. Is that systemic or pulmonary? Portal hypertension, hepatomegaly, problems with the liver, not the lungs, the liver. It is systemic. Okay. Distended neck veins. Your neck, is that part of your pulmonary circulation? No, it is in your systemic, right? Superior vena cava, it backflows mo distend ang imuhang neck veins. Your neck veins get distended. Cough. Pulmonary or systemic? When you have cough, there's phlegm, etc. That is pulmonary. Peripheral edema. So simple. It's in the name. Peripheral. It's not pulmonary. It is systemic. So what I want you guys to realize here is that now you know, right? You know it. You know all of the symptoms, but you did not have to memorize that in left-sided heart failure, it's dyspnea, crackles, orthopnea, and cough. You didn't have to memorize it in right-sided heart failure. It's body weakness, weight gain, hepatomegaly, distended neck veins, peripheral edema. All you had to do was memorize that the left-sided heart failure is pulmonary and the right-sided heart failure is systemic. And through that, you're able to, because you have a good understanding, you did not have to memorize, but you got it all correctly. Alright, so that's how I want you guys to approach studying for the board examination. You don't have to memorize everything. Memorize very little, but have a better understanding. And later in the board examination, even if it's not in one of these words, but if you understand that this is systemic and this is pulmonary, you will be able to decode or understand. You'll still be able to answer based on analyzing instead of memorizing. All right, so let's move on. So diagnostics. This PCWP is called pulmonary capillary wedge pressure. Your CVP is your central venous pressure. So I want you guys to take a guess. Which is pulmonary, or which one is for the left side of the heart and which one is for the right side? It's in the name itself, sa PCWP, it is pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, which means it is for pulmonary, and that's for the left side of the heart, 4 to 12 millimeters mercury. And for central venous pressure, that's of course for the right-sided heart failure. Simple. All you have to remember here, concept of backflow, left-sided heart failure is pulmonary, right-sided heart failure is systemic. That's all. Everything else falls into place after that. So management, what do we want? We want to check intake and output. So we measure strictly the intake and the output of the patient because our problem is the fluids, right, that exist in our lungs. Okay, so we want to get rid of those. So be careful and be strict when you're measuring intake and output for a patient with heart failure. You also want to check the daily weight again, because your weight is a good indicator of the amount of fluid that exists in your body. Our position, we want it to be Fowler's, semi-Fowler's, or high Fowler's, to let the patient breathe better. Okay, because if the patient is lying down, it's harder for the lungs to expand. If the patient is sitting up, there's more room for expansion. It allows the patient to breathe better. Okay, so we want to provide rest and uninterrupted sleep. Okay, so you don't want the patient to be so tired already. Okay, and for medications, we have what you call digoxin, which is an inotropic drug. All right. So there are two types of cardio drugs. So here's the first is inotropic drugs and the second is chronotropic drugs. So your heart can pump either an increase in force, okay, increase in force, or increase in rate, meaning it will pump faster, pump harder, or pump faster. Chronotropic drugs allow it to pump faster, but inotropic drugs cause it to pump harder. And that's what we want to do in heart failure, because your heart is already tired, right? So it does not have enough energy to like pump hard and pump a lot of blood. So that's what digoxin does. That is what inotropic drugs do. Okay. Another drug is diuretics. Again, we don't want that fluid build up in our lungs or in our livers, so we want as much as possible to eliminate that from the body through the use of diuretics. Okay, we also want to administer high flow oxygen. We usually use the Venturi mask. What is the Venturi mask? It looks like this. Okay. That is the Venturi mask. And why do we use the Venturi mask? Because it is the one that delivers the most precise O2. Okay? So that's what I want you guys to remember in the management. So quiz. Again, what is left-sided heart failure? Left-sided heart failure, is that pulmonary or systemic? Left pulmonary. Right-sided is systemic. Early signs and symptoms, I already mentioned this. I even made it a star for you. That is tachypnea and tachycardia. Why again? Because this is a compensatory mechanism. You're breathing faster. You're trying to eliminate. It's compensating. And tachycardia again, because it cannot pump harder, it's just gonna try to pump faster. Diagnostics. Okay. We have PCWP for your left-sided heart failure, and you also have CVP. Our position, we want it to be Fowler's. What do we want to monitor? Patient's daily weight, or I&O. Okay, and our medications, digoxin and diuretics. This is your board bites. Just remember that. That's all. So again, Nurse Lyle is carrying for 3-year-old patient Briggs who is experiencing early signs of heart failure. What do we know about heart failure? That heart failure, okay, there is left-sided is pulmonary, right-sided is systemic. Early signs and symptoms are tachycardia and tachypnea. What else? Yeah. We also want digoxin and diuretics. Alright. So what symptoms does Nurse Lyle expect to observe? So what are the early signs and symptoms of heart failure? Again, that is your tachycardia and tachypnea. Alright, so peripheral edema. Is that an early sign and symptom? We're looking for positive. Nope. Heart rate of 210 beats per minute. Is that tachycardia? Yes. Tachycardia. So we will put as positive, but we'll look at the others. Temperature of 38 degrees Celsius. It's not necessarily part of the signs and symptoms of heart failure. Crackles and rails, it is a sign of left-sided heart failure, but it is not known as an early sign. So it is actually letter B. And that is it for heart failure. I hope you guys learn a little bit of something from this. And thank you so much. See you on the next video. Bye. Also, the notes, flashcards, summaries, quizzes, and many more are listed in the description box down below. Don't forget to join our community where we share more topics like these. Thank you and goodbye, future RNs.